Hi, welcome to this week's Fireside Chat from my kitchen on a hot, muggy, humid day. It's good to be here digitally with you. I want to say a huge thank you to Mary and John Phillips, who are ensuring on the other side of this screen the technology works well and flows smoothly. Thank you also to Terry Boyd for rendering these recordings to our YouTube channel from where you've accessed this video. What I really appreciate from the three of them is the work they have done to learn how to make it all work. This often means they have had to learn on their own. Librarians are helpful, but if you are looking for self-help books, well, for those of us looking for do-it-yourself entertainment, here's a silly question to consider. Of course, many of us already entertain ourselves mindlessly. Still others resort to contemplating the heavens for entertainment. People like me want to keep fit while we're entertained, so sales staff have adapted their sales pitches to suit our slacker reality. Then there are the punsters who use pets to illustrate groaners. And have you ever wondered about the name smartphone for our pocket devices? I will believe they are actually smartphones when I ask, and the smartphone answers. Our dogs, however, have different goals when communicating. Finally, social media can be used slyly by healthcare workers as an incentive to encourage others to get the jab. The recent sentencing of the police officer in Minneapolis who murdered George Floyd over a year ago brings into sharp focus the systemic racism within our society. Sadly, it seems to me that racism is rearing its ugly head too often after hiding in dark corners for a while. It worries me and certainly seems contrary to the good news that Jesus taught, lived, and died to instill. Such observations might lead some to consider out-of-the-box solutions to it all, like suggested in this video clip from an episode of This Hour Has 22 Minutes.
You know why I stopped you?
Not really.
Do you know how fast you were going?
The speed limit?
Step outside the vehicle, please.
You just pulled me over because I'm black?
I'm gonna have to check your priors. Oh, backup's here.
Okay, so what do we have going on here? I've done nothing wrong. Do you know why I pulled you over?
Pull me over. No, I pulled him over.
Uh-huh. Do you know how fast you were going to arrest him?
He was driving suspiciously.
Mm-hmm. Did you know people of color are involved in a disproportionate number of police interactions and are 2 to 3 times more likely to be pulled over by police while driving?
Yeah, I've been pulled over 3 times this week.
That's why I'm proud to protect people of color from people like you on the POCPD.
The People of Color Police Department.
So you only pulled me over because I'm a cop?
Exactly. I'm gonna have to run your priors.
Prior what?
Prior discriminations. All right, I'm gonna need to run a check. Suspect is a police officer, male, Caucasian.
Care to narrow it down?
You know what? Why don't you just send backup?
I sent backup the minute you called.
All right, you guys seem busy. Can I bounce?
Yeah.
No! I've done nothing wrong. This is cop-on-cop crime. Now let me do my job.
You let me do my job. Well, looky here. Someone's packing.
That's a department-issued firearm.
Mm-hmm. Tell it to the judge. I'm gonna have to write you up. You're free to go.
My man.
The People of Color Police Department.
Yeah, we got a 640.
I know this is just a comedy sketch, but we should make this happen. like right now.
The last weary words from the video echo in our minds. I know this is just a comedy sketch, but we should make this happen right now. The sad thing is that those of us who are privileged in our society don't really understand how society is structured for us. We don't see the inequities because we don't experience them. It is our and my blind spot. It affects all Black, Indigenous, and people of color devastatingly. I have learned this. If I want to end racism, both in our society and in my own life, I need to treat racism like I treat COVID-19. First, I have to assume I have it. In other words, that I am racist. Then I have to actively listen to experts about racism, learning from the experiences of others affected by and trapped within racism. Then I need to carefully stop spreading racism. That requires me to be willing to change my life to end racism, putting what I have learned by listening to the experts and to those who are affected by racism into action. After all, racism is being revealed every day. Consider the 715 unmarked graves found on the grounds of the former Maryville Indian Residential School in Saskatchewan. The Catholic Church ran the school and oversaw a communal graveside since 1886. Chief Cadmus Delorme says the church removed the headstones in 1960. This is a crime in Canada, yet no one was ever charged. In the coming months, the Cowessess First Nation will be working to put names to the 751 graves. This doll and poster on the front steps of the Cape Croker United Church speak powerfully about the effect of systemic racism on Indigenous people. As the poster proclaims, every child matters. These were hearts created and posted by children on the palisade behind the Cape Croker United Church as a sign of their pain, their anguish, their loss, and their hopelessness. In the same manner, this red dress was hung on the manse's garage door to represent the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Because of racism against Indigenous people, far, far too many women and girls have been murdered or have gone missing and likely killed or trafficked for being Indigenous. Consider the horrifying and continual loss we privileged white folks perpetrate on them because they are not us. This is the wise elder and student minister at Cape Croker United Church, Joyce Johnston. This picture of Joyce was taken in a much happier time when she was feeling hopeful that reconciliation was beginning, albeit too slowly. The images on the bags in her hands are of the tree of life, an Indigenous image of hope and of transformation. This is what Joyce shared on her Facebook page after the unmarked graves of 751 were revealed in Saskatchewan. I quote, "My heart is near to bursting, and I am caught in bouts of anger, rage, sadness, and just feeling so lost. For years, we have wanted inclusion, to sit at their tables, health, education, social and economic development, Children's Aid Society, penal institutions, and yes, their churches, the government, federal, provincial, and municipal. Why? All of them have betrayed our trust, abandoned us, and control us in the colonial ways of being. It is time to set our own tables, to say it is time for us to create our own way of being and of doing. Our people have been there in their time of need during the great wars and their undeclared wars. Our children have become an economic base for those non-native homes that foster, and yet little is done to support the parents who would benefit from real support. She writes, I opted into the ministry to help deliver a process that is Aboriginal driven, based on what the community's vision is as it relates to worshiping Creator. A church that is dedicated to be there for and by the people. I want accountability in why, who, and what was done to those children who died and those who lived as well. The cover-up is just not acceptable, unquote. Here is a summary of what she is referencing.
We finally know the truth, what Canada was and what Canada is. A country built on the backs of Indigenous people. We helped settlers when they came to a land that we had lived on for thousands of years, and for our help, among many atrocities, our children were taken. My grandmother, Sarah Robertson, attended Norway House Indian Residential School and passed away, having never told her story, just of a sister who had died at school long before my grandmother had given up searching for her. This is our Canada. If you're Indigenous, it's taken far more than it has given. It's buried secrets with silence and denial and manufactured history. My high school was a few blocks away from Assiniboia Residential School, a building that is still standing today. And how could we not have known that? How could we not have been told? Residential school history is not Indigenous history. It's not Canadian history. It's not history at all when we are still healing, even as new wounds have been opened. This is Canada now. Reconciliation is a shared responsibility, and you need to figure out what your role is. Educate yourself with stories told by Indigenous people. Share what you've learned, and use that knowledge to take action that will create lasting, meaningful change. We are not living in the same country today as we were yesterday, but do you really want to go back to where we were? We know what this country was. We know what this country is. But what do you want this country to be? What kind of future do you want to have? And how are we going to get there together?
Joyce finished her Facebook post with these words, quote, "It has cost us so much, and our children are the center of our communities. Truth and reconciliation will never happen without the truth. This needs to happen in order for Indigenous people and Canadians to move ahead and to celebrate reconciliation in a real way." The Reverend Lee Claus, a friend of mine and a ministry colleague who was one of the first 2 Indigenous ministers ordained in the United Church in Southern Ontario in 2001, replied to Joyce's post. "Those of us who serve the church, I'm finding it very hard indeed. Their bones and spirits are crying out for justice. Church, can you hear?" In fact, some are lobbying to cancel Canada Day. They say that canceling Canada Day is not about cancel culture. It's about letting Indigenous and First Peoples know that we see them, we love them, we mourn with them, and we support them. Canceling Canada Day is about acknowledging that we need to do better as a society and as a nation. Canceling Canada Day is the first step in beginning to build a better Canada. I would suggest there are more constructive alternatives to support Indigenous peoples on Canada Day. If we commit to even just one of these actions, we are making a start at reconciliation. Wear orange to show your support for those impacted by residential schools. Orange is the color of the new shirt Phyllis Webstad wore to her first day of residential school. Her grandmother bought it for her, and she was proud of it. The staff took it away and destroyed it, forcing her to wear standard issue clothing. Wearing orange means you are sorry for the abusive nature of residential schools. Sign up for free online courses at any university to learn about the history of Indigenous peoples in Canada. Do your own research without expecting Indigenous people to have to do it for you. Hold space for engaging in a conversation about the history of Canada. Carve out the time in your life to engage in dialogue. Donate time or money to Indigenous organizations. For example, the Healing Fund of the United Church is specifically given to Indigenous communities of faith to use when and how they decide. Watch a free film online to learn more about Indigenous peoples. I recommend the National Film Board website as it has a specific category on residential schools, or you can use their search engine with the keywords Indigenous peoples. Proactively learn about the history and legacy of residential schools. Wikipedia has some great information. Follow Indigenous creators and artists on social media. I love the music found on YouTube or the blogs online from Indigenous creators or podcasts on Indigenous issues. And if you wish, follow the hashtag Cancel Culture Day hashtag to learn more. We as a society and we as a church should consider the part we have ourselves played in perpetuating racism and discrimination in the world. The young woman in this video I'm going to show you has it right. In the aftermath of the terrorist murder of 4 family members in London, Ontario, just because they were Muslim, she was recorded delivering this passionate spoken word poem about paying attention and acting to change the world.
But how can there be peace if there is systemic discrimination? Politicians who say they're against hate, who actually set this racist foundation. How can you think there's no correlation? You can't ban my hijab in parts of this nation and then tell me you value my participation. How does this make sense? You can't ban children from flying because of their Muslim name, treat us like suspects, and then say you're not to blame. You knock on my door when it's time to get elected, and I vote for you, thinking I'll be protected. But if you don't keep the promises you make, I will find someone who will, because my life is at stake. You can talk all you want with the we wills and we cans, but if you don't take real action, our blood is on your hands. And not just Muslim blood, but native, brown, and black. If any one of us is threatened, we are all under attack. There is hate, but the love is more. There is fear, but the faith is more. There is hurt, but the hope is more. See, even with my trauma and all of my pain, I still go out of my way and build bridges again and again, because connecting with you is my only defense. If I convince you I'm human enough, maybe you won't be on the fence. Maybe it'll start to make sense. But how can there be peace?
Indeed, how can there be peace? As this wise young woman proclaims, if we take real action, despite the hate, the doubt, and the hurt, love is more, faith is more, hope is more. I don't think she is trying to say that love covers up the hate, or that faith covers up the doubt, or that hope chases away the pain. Instead, I believe she is saying that in our brokenness, we are ever searching for healing. After all, this is what God's kingdom is like. A bunch of outcasts and oddballs gathered at a table, not because they were rich or worthy or good, but because they are hungry, because they said yes. And there's always room for more. So here we are at the table. We, this motley crew of misfits. A good old boy trucker with a beard. A passionate gay couple. A transgender person. A hardened prisoner from penitentiary. A gang member and a drug dealer. A cocaine snorting addict. A child soldier. A Taliban freedom fighter. a wealthy, well-connected, privileged businessman, a single mom struggling to survive in the gig economy. All of us are being led and taught by a peasant backwoods country boy with seeming delusions of grandeur who would always welcome us. We sit at the same table, hungry for sustenance, which will heal our brokenness, yearning for connection that will transform us, longing for relationships which will encourage us to make the world a better place. When the meal is done, like he said to his followers, he says to us, okay, folks, let's go out there and love those they call sinners by respecting their freedom and treating them with dignity. He might well have added that, after all, we are sinners too. Yet we fear the transformation as much as we long for it. So Jesus simplifies the task, speaking to us as if we were children. I never told you to hate anybody. I don't care where they're from, what they look like, who they're in love with, or who they worship. Just love one another. Just love one another. Maybe we wonder if it is easier said than done. I can tell you it certainly is. The path is daunting. But in the light of the terrors and the genocide we have perpetrated on Indigenous people, in light of the racism against Black and people of color, in light of attacks on Muslims, in light of our ease dividing ourselves because of difference, it is long past time to take up the cross and follow the way of love. This prayer was written by parliamentary poet laureate Louise B. Hafsky, reflecting on the Kamloops atrocity, and now applicable to the former Maryville Indian Residential School grounds. Let us picture these prayer images through her words as we pray. A cradle board hangs from a tree. A beaded moss bag is folded in a small chest. A child's moccasin is tucked into a skin pipe bag. Children's shoes in a ghost dance. A mother clutches these, palms held against her face. A river runs between her fingers. A small boy covered in soot on all fours, a naked toddler, plays in the water while her Cookum's skirt is wet to her calves. How tall are you now? She asked. I'm bigger than the blueberry shrub. Oh, as tall as an aspen where my birth was buried. See my belly button? Each have dragged a rabbit to the tent, a teepee, watched expert hands, skin, butcher, make berry soup for dinner. A boy falls a robin with a slingshot. He is shown how to skewer the breast, roast the bird on hot coals. He will not kill without purpose again. The teepee, tent, the log shack are empty. Trees crane their heads through the teepee flats, the tent door, through the cracks of the mud shack. A mother's long wail from 1890 carried in the wind. A grandparent pokes embers, a sprinkle of tobacco, cedar, sweetgrass, fungus, sage, swirls upward. Children's creaks trickle in their sleep. A blanket of deep earth covered fingers entwined, arms around each other. We have been waiting. It is time to release this storm that consumes all this nation. Hawasis, this spirit light, these angels dance in the flame. The bones will share their stories. Listen, act. These children are ours, could be yours. Amen. These children could have been ours, and that hits home. Soak it in as we depart. As we go from this digital space, I pray that love will surround you, that hope will motivate you, that listening will educate you, and that loving will recreate us all. Until next week's Fireside Chat. Goodbye.